Hey guys, tonight we're going to get a little drafty. Not in a grab your blanket way, but in the quiet, unsettling sense that somewhere behind the walls, something seems to breathe when you do. So, dim the lights, get comfortable, preferably not near an antique mirror, and let's talk about one of humanity's favorite delusions, that buildings can feel. Specifically, the houses that seem aware of us, watching, waiting, judging our wallpaper choices. It sounds romantic, doesn't it? A grand old estate that has seen things. But if you've ever spent a night alone in a creaking Victorian, you know there's a fine line between charming personality and malevolent awareness. And our story tonight walks that line for about 3 centuries straight. Let's start with a house that might actually hate people, or at least has done a spectacular job pretending to. The House of Ashcombe Hill. Sitting on a lonely rise in the English countryside, Ashcombe Hill Manor was built in the late 1600s by a man named Sir Lionel de Vries. He was one of those late Stuart-era nobles who had far more ambition than sense, the kind who wore wigs taller than his social standing. Sir Lionel was convinced that a house could inherit a person's soul. Not figuratively. He wrote about it extensively in letters that historians now describe as eccentric, which is the polite academic term for this man licked mercury paint and saw God in the curtains. So Lionel poured everything into the construction, imported oak beams from Germany, limestone hauled from his ancestral lands, and, disturbingly, mortar mixed with ashes from the family crypt. Because, of course he did. A house that knows its name. From the start, locals said the house felt wrong. The servants complained of headaches. Horses refused to approach the main gate. The kitchen fires would extinguish themselves for no reason. And at night, the windows would fog up from the inside. Lionel, naturally, loved it. He called the strange occurrences proof that the house lives. In one surviving letter to a friend, he wrote, "The walls hold breath. I hear them exhale when I wake." Which again is a line that sounds poetic until you realize this man was sleeping next to self-ventilating limestone. By 1703, Ashcombe Hill had earned a reputation. The staff rotated constantly. Servants would quit after a week, claiming they were being watched from the wallpaper. One maid reportedly refused to dust the portraits because she swore the eyes moved. The de Vries family, of course, dismissed all of this. They were aristocrats. Their entire social code depended on ignoring the obvious. If the house was haunted, then it was merely haunted tastefully. Generations of unease. After Lionel's death, which, conveniently, occurred inside the house under what doctors called spontaneous suffocation, the property passed to his son, Edmund. Edmund tried to modernize things. He tore down one wing, repainted the halls, and replaced the old portraits with landscapes. But no matter what he did, the same atmosphere persisted, that heavy, slow sense of being looked at. Visitors described it as a constant presence, like a quiet breath on the back of your neck. Even when you were alone, you weren't. Edmund's wife, Lady Catherine, took to sleeping in the carriage house to escape the main building. She said, "The mirrors whispered," which sounds dramatic, until you realize that early mirrors were made with mercury and would actually shift reflections over time. So yes, technically the mirrors were whispering, just not in any comforting way. The house outlives everyone. Here's the strange thing about old estates. Their owners die, their portraits crack, and their titles fade into bureaucratic nonsense. But the buildings persist, quietly eroding under ivy and damp. By the 19th century, Ashcombe Hill had outlived nearly every member of the De Vries line. The remaining heir, a frail man named Reginald, lived alone there with only a handful of servants. His journals survive, and they're bleak. He wrote, "At night, I hear my name in the walls. It comes like a sigh." Again, poetic, but not the kind of poetry you want echoing from your rafters. He began sealing off rooms one by one, claiming they do not wish to be used. By 1878, only 3 rooms were habitable: the bedroom, the kitchen, and the study. The rest were padlocked and forgotten. Neighbors said that by then, the house looked like it was sinking into the ground, windows darkened by mildew and ivy swallowing the walls like green smoke. Reginald died in 1881. The servants buried him in the garden because the ground was too hard to dig anywhere else. The house was left unclaimed for 20 years. And yet, it didn't fall apart. No vandals, no collapse. It just waited. The 20th century intrusion. In 1902, a London architect named Thomas Firth purchased Ashcombe Hill as a restoration project. He wanted to turn it into a country retreat for artists, because nothing inspires creative work like asbestos and ancestral grief. He moved in with his wife, Clara, and a small team of laborers. Within a week, the workers began refusing to stay after dark. Tools went missing, blueprints shifted overnight, and scaffolding collapsed for no clear reason. Thomas documented everything meticulously. His notebooks read like a slow unraveling. Heard a voice on the stairs. Empty. Windows pulse in the night. The walls have a rhythm, like breathing. By 1904, Clara left. She claimed the house hated her, which, coming from someone married to an architect, is saying something. Thomas, stubborn and scientifically minded, refused to believe it. He stayed alone for another 6 months. When the foreman came to collect his things, they found every room in the West Wing repainted, not by human hand. The walls were coated in a thin, organic film, the same pale gray color as ash. No one could explain it. Samples were taken, but the records, of course, were lost. Let's float gently to the present. Today, Ashcombe Hill still stands. Its ownership has changed hands a dozen times. Some say it's private property. Others insist it's abandoned. A few trespassers have filmed its interior, or claim to have, though every recording eventually corrupts halfway through, as if the house refuses to be seen. Local folklore calls it the house that watches you, because anyone who spends more than a night there swears the same thing. The rooms rearrange themselves when you're not looking. Doors that weren't there before appear. Corridors shorten. The floorboards sigh when you step on them, as if something underneath is adjusting. It's easy to dismiss this as imagination. The power of suggestion, the draft through an old window frame, the paranoia of being truly alone in silence. But maybe, as Lionel de Vries believed, a house can inherit the soul of its maker. And if that's true, then Ashcombe Hill isn't haunted. It's just awake. Let's float gently to the next part, where we'll see what happens when modern science tried to prove the impossible, that a house can remember.